to the Inuvik settlement area, home to the Witchem and Inuvik Métis, other Indigenous people from throughout Canada, as well as other people from throughout Canada and the world, and all contribute to making Inuvik a great place to live and work and visit. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. On Wednesday, we will have the adoption of the agenda. Is there anything further that we need to add to the agenda? Nothing. Declaration of conflict or pecuniary interest with any of the agenda items? Seeing nothing. Public question period, item number 5. Any questions from the public? None. Adoption of the minutes. Wednesday, we will adopt the minutes from the June 25th council meeting. Our meeting in a package. Any corrections needed on any of those items? Okay. Action items that come out of the minutes and those minutes and the previous minutes. I think probably the only update on any of those would be on the boat launch, and you'll see there that we did receive the 165,000. We'd applied for more from infrastructure, and that we recently have had some work at the boat launch to make it a little bit more accessible. It was pretty rough with one lane, and so we had Northwind down there. They did a couple days work and ended up digging a bunch of garbage out of the boat launch and then filled with rock and filled with smaller rock. And anyway, it's a lot more usable now. And we had a boat launch meeting last Friday with the committee, and we'll be looking at what we can get done this year with the money we've got, and then we'll plan for a bigger year next year and do some apply for other funds this fall. Under new business, 8.1 tender award for children's first renovations. You'll see in your package, there's the bids that were received and what's being recommended for that award. Any questions on the children's first tender package? Deputy Mayor Farrell.
Thank you. Let's see, we got the low bidder recommended, but it also has the latest substantial completion date, no anticipated issues. A little bit longer time construction.
The substantial completion date that was included in the tender was November 1st.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was September 30.
It's the November 1st deadline in open.
Okay. No, thanks for that. I thought it was September 30th in my head. Thanks.
No, that would have been tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and this is why our infrastructure Daniel wanted to get it out as soon as possible. Give everybody the opportunity to get the material, get it organized, and yeah, get it done. Okay, no further questions, comments on the tender? Okay.
I got one there, Peter.
Oh, Mario.
For number 3, Harbor Enterprise, is non-responsive submission. Does that mean it's just like it, or what's the deal there?
So the tender package had a couple mandatory documents that needed to be submitted. One of them was the schedule form, another was the certificate of the certified flooring installer.
Okay.
And if you notice that I put yes, wherever that for the schedule form, we've all 4 of them completed that, but the last 2 did not submit those certificates. Having said that, Harbor Enterprises did include a name and a certificate number, saying they could get us the certificates, but he doesn't have it at hand. But obviously, during the tender process itself, until the deadline of that tender process, no certificate was received.
So it's non-responsive,
So it's non-responsive. Yes.
okay, so he can't be considered,
Not necessarily.
okay.
Okay. Any further questions on 8.1? Okay, your mic's still on, also with you.
Oh, sorry.
9.1, third reading for the 2025 annual tax billing bylaw. Any further questions on that? Third reading on Wednesday. 9.2, request for council decision, Town of Inuvik Community Plan. Plan was given out to everyone a couple weeks ago and just to look at it. Any questions, comments on the community plan? I believe also everyone got the maps associated with that. Deputy Mayor Barrett.
Sorry, I had reviewed this weekend, sent in a series of comments, edits, questions to Jenna. I don't know if I'm gonna go through in here. Discussion, council.
Yeah, if there's any question or clarification you need, this is place we can do it, or we'll make sure we have the answer by Wednesday. If we don't have the answer now, but
Right. So I'll just go through my.
Yeah.
Here, just got it handy. Some of them were just minor edits and spelling errors, but, for example, in 1.8 plan circulation, it talks about how plan will be circulated to community members and relevant stakeholders. I just wasn't sure whether we should make any specific reference to Gwich'in and Inuvialuit or indigenous governments within that, because they often don't like being just lumped in as relevant stakeholders, so kind of an acknowledgement of their sort of special status in the region. And then probably head off some potential concerns back about that. That was one item. I don't know if any comment on that as well.
we can certainly add in there that we'll consult with the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit governments and other stakeholders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, just sort of,
give it a little more profile.
yeah.
Yeah.
They often appreciate that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
In section 2.1.4 under economy, I just noted that significant economic development from oil and gas resources in the Mackenzie Delta and Beaufort Sea. Some of it just referenced the Beaufort Sea, but some of that development fields are actually in the Mackenzie Delta, not out in the ocean. So just, again,
Okay, yeah.
clarification.
Yeah.
Something minor. Also in that same section, I just added in Aurora Campus Hub or Aurora College for clarity. There was also, the last sentence talked about opportunities to grow existing satellite facilities in Inuvik with the airport and other resources. I wasn't sure if there's something we may want to add in specific to the fiber lines, just because that's a good key component of those satellite facilities, the ability to transmit that data out to the fiber lines.
Yeah.
So again, it's just beefing it up a little bit, tooting our horn with the resources in the region. Inuvialuit Sustainable Energy Project, I think it's actually the Inuvialuit Energy Security Project.
Okay.
It's fixing the name.
Sorry, where was that last comment?
Oh, just the Inuvialuit Sustainable Energy Project is what was referred to in the document under 2.1.6. But I believe the actual name of it is the Inuvialuit Energy Security Project. So it's just the name correction of that project. The other one I just, in 3.1 in objective 2. This talks about all developed lots shall have physical and legal access to a road installed by the owner. I don't know if it's correct to say access to a road via a driveway installed by the owner, because the way it was written, it sounded like it was the owner responsible to install the road. So just to
Clarify that, because it is the driveway.
Yeah, for greater clarity. Then in shoreline areas on page 15. In objective 1. Policy B. It says no new permanent or temporary roads will be permitted on shorelines. Well, what about the ice roads? It's the access onto the ice road has to transit across the shoreline. So I don't know if there was a discrepancy in practice.
I think the meaning was permanent roads, but I mean, we can.
Yeah, so
Also
but
to clarify that, say, with the exception of the ice road
ice road
access.
access, something like that, just again, for greater certainty or no uncertain terms, I'm saying you can't build an ice road access. And in 4.1 on page 18. Objective 1 talks about looking to provide demand for residential development over the next 10 years. But at the beginning of the document, it talks about how this is looking at it as a 20-year outlook. So one part you're saying it's a 20-year document, another you're saying it's 10. So we just want to make that consistent in one way or the other.
I think we can make that consistent, so that's.
Yeah, sorry, it's a lot of minor stuff, but I think it's just good to
No, it's
highlight
good.
anything.
It's good to have extra eyes on it.
And then in page 25, section 4.5, objective 6. Again, minor, but in this objective, you're talking about Airport Lake, whereas early in the document, you actually refer to it as Dolomite Lake, so consistency.
Yeah.
Technically, it's Dolomite Lake, it's Airport Lake. Just pick one or the other and just use it consistently throughout. Oh, 5.3 on page 33. In objective 2. Talks about identify areas of improvement with solid waste management. I wasn't sure if we wanted to add in a second objective just with reference to the landfill fence we're installing as an improved management practice. Put a little bit of suggested wording in there, but it could always be figured out. So again, and my addition was the town should install, maintain an energized fence surrounding the solid waste facility. Manage access by wildlife and unauthorized access by people. Because there's always that issue as well, not just from the wildlife side. So it's just an opportunity to sort of flag the improvements we are already undertaking. And it's gonna have to be maintained continuously, so. Highlighting that in here, I thought was useful. 5.4 on page 34. Objective 1, policy A. Talk about residential mixed use buildings shall be limited to 3 stories. Fire, for instance, we've got the ladder truck with the fire department. I thought that would allow us to build buildings larger than 3 stories, should it be desired at some point. But I wasn't sure about whether there's any technical barriers to having a building over 3 stories in town.
I don't think that's been changed now. I don't know if the ladder truck allows us to reach higher than 3 stories. So that's going on. Yeah, we'll check before Wednesday. I don't know. Cindy, you're online. Do you know if the ladder truck allows us to reach higher than 3 stories?
So the ladder is a 105-foot ladder. Doing some quick math at 10 feet per story. That'll allow us at least to get up top. Above it, it just depends. So I think that's part of the reason, certainly, is the access to it, because we don't want it just to be able to reach the rooftop. We want to actually be able to be above the building.
Yeah, I know in the past it was a limitation because there was no ladder truck and they just couldn't fight it, but with the ladder truck here, I thought, well, what if, say, for example, IRC building, this new building wanted to build a 5-story building rather than 3? Would that be possible and still be able to be serviced by the fire department, if necessary? So it's just a question, it's whether it has to change in here or not, or to change at some future time. It's something to think about. Do we
Certainly.
want to change the limitation of 3 stories if we don't need?
Good point.
Again, back to the fire safety aspect of that, then there would be some conditions, and if it is a multi-use, multi-unit dwelling, we'd also look at sprinklers and that type of thing to augment the, you know, in-building fire protection as well. So that's something to give some consideration to, and I will speak to the fire chief about that as well.
Yeah, if we could get some indication on Wednesday whether this is a limitation that we actually have, or is it something we're just self-imposing at this point? Given that we have potentially the equipment that could deal with a larger or higher build.
Peter?
Councilor Lemieux.
Yeah, I think that was the reason for the 3 stories was because of the ladder truck. There's, I think previous to that, and actually less than that, we got back in the day when we were getting that truck, and they made 3 stories specifically because of the IEC building to get a ladder truck to get 3 stories, and then that became the maximum height. I think that's how that came about, like a number of years ago. So I don't know if that needs to be changed or looked at. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll look at that and have the fire chief look at that, and we'll come back and answer on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, prior to the current ladder truck we have, there definitely was a limitation on capability. My understanding was when this new ladder truck was purchased, that it could have potentially allowed for access to fighting fires at a higher elevation. So I could be wrong. So
Yeah.
Wednesday, I think I can get some clarity on that. 6.1 on page 35, I just reworded the last sentence. It was just read a bit awkward to me, so it's just about the town of Inuvik is and will remain the only subdivision developer for the foreseeable future, and it will not set development of subdivision regulations as a priority. And so it's an awkwardly written sentence. Switch it around a bit. Hopefully looks better, reads better. And 6.2 on page 36. In objective 3, in policy A and B, I just thought it was a bit odd where in policy A, we're saying we shall establish the increase of taxation for owned but vacant derelict properties. But then in B, we may explore the development of bylaws to increase. So one say we're saying it's mandatory, and then the other one we're saying it's totally optional. So it just seemed inconsistent whether that was purposeful or not. It just jumped out at me. And then in the same section in objective 4, I specified hazardous building materials. We're speaking specifically about vacant and derelict buildings rather than any hazardous material. And also in the objective, you talk about hazardous materials, but then in the policy in B, you talk about non-hazardous materials. So there was a discrepancy between those two. So are we talking about hazardous or are we talking about non-hazardous? Just to make sure it's clear. That's in the B at the towards the end of the last sentence there. So it just needs to be clarified, or unless I'm just reading it wrong.
Peter Schultz, our development officer, is noting all of these, so he'll
Yep.
check on the consistency of posting.
Yeah, and it's all been forwarded to Jenna with all my suggestions. I think that might have been it for the things I noted in the document, so thanks for bearing with me on all that.
No, it's all good, and it's all. It's like, if we're gonna use this plan for the next 8 years, it's worth the time to review it, it's worth the time to answer any questions on it, and it's worth the time to do the public consultation on it, so all of it's worthwhile. Any other questions, comments, clarifications needed on the community plans?
Well,
Yeah, Peter, it's Alana here.
Okay, go ahead, Alana.
Okay, so there's just a couple. Steve got a whole bunch that I had, but on 1.3, the 4th bullet down, it said identify available land for various of land uses. I think that might mean a variety of land uses. So we just need to clarify that. And then I noticed that term in 1.8, we refer to the NWT Housing Corporation, and later it's referred to by its new name, which is Housing NWT.
Okay.
Under 2.0, it talks about a 2.0, it talks about a perimeter collector road. Is that referring to the bypass?
I would, yes, that's why we talked about bypass.
Okay, because that was never part of the original plan. That was actually the fire guard cut in the fire of 1968. But still, I mean, if we could give streets their proper name, otherwise things get very confusing, because I also noticed at one point Mackenzie Road has been changed to Main Street, I think is what it's being called, which we don't have a main street. I would prefer to see our actual name. Yeah, so that's 4.3 in the downtown core. If we could stick to the actual street name so people know what we're referring to. And I think that might be everything, because Mr. Barlock was such a good editor, he beat me to everything. I think that's all I have. If I find anything else, I'll just email it in.
Email it in and we'll make all of those consistency changes for Wednesday. Councilor McDonald.
I do.
Yeah, I'm just still up on the map with solar array is there for the town. And showing green parks and open space. Are we considering that array a public utility or?
Peter Schultz, do you know why we left that in zone, I think a parks or green area? We had discussed that, I remember, but do you recall?
Can you please restate the question? Because I was writing a note on perimeter roads while the question was being asked.
Oh, okay, just the solar array for the town there. It's in green space now. It's showing that would, if that's considered a public utility, then it'd be okay. But
Yes.
is that what we're, okay.
Yeah, a solar array is considered a public utility because it generates electricity for the community.
So if you have a private array, I mean, this is more of a private, the utility isn't utility companies and not a private generation plant.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I mean, we're producing electricity privately at that point, right? It's not the utility that's providing that. I'm just wondering if that, like, that, it's a little bit confusing how that's a utility project and not. I mean, we could have put it to the community use, I guess. That's what I would thought. Zoning as community use.
So you're wondering if it's in.
Yeah, well,
Correct.
I don't think that's a proper definition of utility as being solar, like in a green space.
Any further comment, Peter?
No, when we wrote it, we were thinking of solar panels as being public utilities. If we need to re-access the definition, we'd have to scratch our heads a bit more.
Okay, let's just check that between now and Wednesday and then see what makes the most sense. Any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Barrett.
Yeah, so I do have some more. These ones are more specific to the maps associated with it. So in the maps, I see we've got some new, a new subdivision being looked at up on the top of the hill. And I guess I see a lot of it's being proposed as designated R2 medium residential, or but specifically on the lots that are directly across from the current existing buildings on Bombas. We have one section where it's the buildings immediately across are R1 light residential, but then in the next section over, they're R2 medium residential. I wasn't sure why the thought was to put medium residential again directly across the street from another whole section that's zoned as light residential. Or it's speaking specifically of this area here and here.
Yeah.
I think the other ones that are zoned make sense in the way that they are. But that one, I just wasn't sure why we would, again, front facing properties immediately across from each other being differently in this case. And differently from the whole other section of town that's already in there zoned as R1 residential, so I wasn't sure if there was a rationale for that. And the other question I had.
Before we go to that question, let's just get
Sure.
a response from Peter on that one. Peter, is there any, were we just making sure we had R1 and R2 assigned, or was there a reason why they were designated the way they were?
First of all, those vacant residential expansion areas, I found them in an arc in the AutoCAD archive of the town. So I just simply grabbed those lines and used them. And applied my best guess on whether they should be R1 or R2. So in that particular block, I think I was looking at it's not too far from the high school. So, and in an R2 lot, you can put a single family house on it with a condition with a discretionary use. So you could have single family homes on an R2 lot. But yeah, no point being taken while the counselor was making his comment, I changed it from R2 to R1.
That spot.
Yeah.
But the other thing we could do is at this point, because that's down the road a bit, is just zone it as residential, and then depending on the need. Whether it's R1 or R2, I mean, we'll likely need both. Just like in the current development that we just finished last year, we're probably gonna be both in there, and I don't know if it's separated now, but at some point it'll be separated.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good chunk of R2 medium density up there as well, but it was that one little block immediately across from the current R1 residential lots.
Isn't that across from what you're talking about where?
No, there's,
Yeah,
so there's that, but then the one adjacent to that is R2.
Oh, those ones up there.
No, yeah, sorry,
These here are what you're talking about,
no.
the other way.
So right now, these are all R1 residential, and there are homes here, and then immediately across the road, sorry, we have R2 residential here, which is the one I'm wondering whether we should perhaps consider making all these ones R1 as well.
I thought you were talking about one.
Yeah, there's the R, which makes sense.
Yes,
There's an R2 here,
yeah.
any of these ones is R2s. Potentially put some larger buildings, some multiplexes or something, makes sense. But it was this one in here that I wasn't sure. Cool, yeah, and the other one I was wondering is, are we not considering putting any zoning along Wolverine?
You've driven Wolverine lately?
Yeah.
And so that's why we're not putting any,
Okay.
this whole area is so wet.
Yeah.
That you would have to put in deep pilings and the road would never, like, similar to this road, it would never stand up, so. Once this is developed. Then we can look at potential other areas, which might even be over here or this side of the lake or whatever. But this will give us plenty of expansion, certainly for the next few years. Yeah, but this is. Certainly in this area here, it's super wet, maybe, well, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine, I just was curious if there was any specific rationale you've just given it. The only other thing, and this kind of crosses into the next item too, is we have the country residential, well, I guess I'll talk about it in the next. In the next item, the country residential that are sort of at the start of the IPH, but it's more of a zoning definition. Or it's something from the zoning document, so I'll save the next one.
Okay. Any other further questions, comments, clarifications needed on the community plan? Again, anything you come up with between now and Wednesday. Pass it over to Jenna and then we can make sure that we get it. I mean, we're still gonna have lots of opportunity between first reading and second reading to make any changes. But we wanna get it as tight as we can before we go out to the indigenous governments, other stakeholders and the general public. Okay? Now we get more into the further details, the town of Inuvik zoning and bylaw. And zoning bylaw, so that basically builds on the community plan and looks at specific zoning and what that would look like and what that would mean. Questions, comments, Steve, or Deputy Mayor Barlick, you have a comment related to further zoning bylaws?
I got a bunch of questions. I didn't get through the whole document, but I kind of focused specifically on part 8, looking at the zoning regs. I have a bunch of questions for potential discussion items over that. I'll see if anyone else has any before I take up most of the time.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, okay. In 8.2, on page 45. In R1 low density residential, in permitted uses, now we see a dwelling duplex. Now, my understanding is that prior to this, that's been a discretionary for R1 residential as far as a duplex. Because we had to make that whole consideration with the proposal to do a duplex on Carmichael, which ended up getting rejected. So are we now shifting a duplex out of discretionary into a permitted use, so it wouldn't come to council anymore?
Peter, do you know the answer to that question?
That is correct. This is a carryover from Dylan's work last year. They had revised the low density residential to be considerably higher density than just single family homes. So that is a decision to be made now. If dwelling duplex is listed under permitted uses, then I as DO, if I get a development permit application for a duplex on an R1 lot that meets all the setbacks and other requirements, then I will issue the permit without going to council. If we move it over to discretionary, it will go to council first.
Great, thank you. And I'm not necessarily against moving over. I just want to make sure that this was correct and what I thought, and that everyone else understands that as well. Because it was a bit of an issue when it came up before. So this would sort of take that discretion away from council and just allow it to be go through without further consideration. So again, I'm not particularly against the idea of moving it over for duplexes in particular, but I see multiplexes and everything are still under R2. So I just wanted to clarify that this had been moved over from discretionary to permitted. Next questions I had were in 8.4 on page 49, country residential. Just in the purpose, this is, I guess, ties back to what I was sort of saying at the end of the last section, is at the end of the purpose, it talks about how the things will not negatively impact Shell Lake. But there's actually other country residential zone items, which are the ones by the start of the ITH. So those are zone country residential as well. So I wasn't quite sure why we're singling out Shell Lake when there's actually at least one other area that has country residential zone lots as well. And the other question I had, which I guess could go out to my fellow councilors, is for the country residential, one of the things that's put in there for discretionary is dwelling manufactured home. Is that something we actually want to have as a discretionary use that's required a council decision to approve? Or would you potentially allow on a country residential lot, say at Shell Lake or out by Willie Moore's place, well, if someone wanted to build a modular home, is that something that we really feel council has to have the say in yes or no that's going to be allowed or not for a manufactured home? So again, it's a question I have for what other councilors may think about it. I don't necessarily think it's necessary, but I'd be curious to see what other people think about it.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
I'm sorry.
Over to you.
Country residential?
Yeah.
There, we can't hear you guys if you don't turn your microphone.
In my opinion, I mean, just judging from costs, availability of contractors, all of the stuff involved, I mean, to say that you can't, if you purchase a lot, put a decent modular home on there, kind of makes it pretty limited to what you can do, you know. They're making decent products now. I don't see a reason to handcuff somebody for that. I mean, given the circumstances, construction around here today.
Okay, Peter, you've noted that that issue?
So does council want me to move dwelling manufactured home from discretionary to permitted?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Sorry, before we move on, since since you're already giving Peter that direction, I'd like to go back to what Deputy Bowerluck had said. He had brought up permitted use in R1, being a duplex could be permitted use, but you didn't make a decision or give the direction. You just discussed. So do you want for R1 duplexes as a permitted use, or do you want Peter to move it back into discretionary use?
I think there was a consensus around the table that Peter indicated that Dylan had made that proposal in order to make it easier to move forward, and there seemed to be consensus around the table that that was acceptable.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
And just to comment on the manufactured home, we're talking about trailers, whatever we're talking about. And so if we're allowing them, is there anywhere where they're not allowed then? In R1, R2, or, so are we basically saying we can put trailers up in county anywhere?
I think there's.
They're
there's-
discretionary
you can
R2.
Correct us, but I think there's still the difference between what we would consider a trailer and a modular home, which in most, not all cases, most cases, there's two halves, but there's still a definition difference between a trailer and a modular home.
One moment.
No, and in part 7.6, it talks about manufactured dwelling, which includes potentially the condition that
Yeah.
the wheels be from a manufactured, like, I don't think a lot of them are hitched up on wheeled trailers anymore.
Right.
But they're definitely classified as the same. And I would note for R2 medium density residential, there would be a discretionary use. So they wouldn't be allowed without council approval for R2. But right now for R1, and what we're suggesting is for country residential, for country, whatever country, yeah, that we would switch it to permitted as well, without requiring an extra approval from council to do that, for those two classes.
Yeah.
I don't agree fully with that, just because of that broad class of manufactured homes. I think if you leave it discretionary and you look at what's going on, a piece of land in different zones, we'll have a little more control over what's going on. You know, if we don't do that, people can put up anything basically anywhere, or R1 or residential. And I think that's what we're trying to stay away from. Well,
I would support that too. I mean, to keep it discretionary. I was just saying, pick up something that was manufactured in 1970, drag it up here and throw it on a lot. We're not looking at that.
That's what I mean, so
Right? So yeah, discretionary would probably be there.
So Peter, on that, is there anything we can do on the definition which separates modular homes from what people typically think of as a trailer? Single wide trailer?
I think it's a great point you've risen. You know what, I would suggest that we include modular construction in the definitions for single detached and duplex. So as far as the zoning bylaw is concerned, it doesn't matter whether it's stick built or modular. If it looks like a single family home, it is a single family home. And leave manufactured homes more specifically for trailers. I think that might be one way to clarify any issues about the whole manufactured homes issues.
Okay, we'll take a look at that between now and Wednesday and then see what we can,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it would be an issue in R1 as well as country residential, so we should just clarify that to make sure that one, people know what is allowed, and two, the neighbors also know what's allowed, so. Okay, that sound good? Okay. I mean, we do have within the community, 1, 2, 3 areas that have more trailer lots than than R1, but I don't know how we differentiated those, so. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, a little bit. 8.5 is more an issue for Jen, it's just a formatting thing, there's a bunch of gaps in the bullet list. Whereas it doesn't have anywhere else. And 8.7 for community use. One of our permitted uses in there is public utility. And when people look closely enough at the map, we've talked a little bit about this before. We have some of our utilidor corridors that are designated as community use, but not all of them throughout the community, so. In the larger scheme of things, again, looking at a 10 or 20-year outlook on this. Are we as a town planning to pursue rezoning all those utilidor corridors to community use? Because right now, lots of them don't have that, there's lots of. Blue missing from between buildings, between lots. So it's not a particular issue at the moment, but it's kind of more of just as a council, is that something we see needing to be pursued to, I want to say, take a bit more control over the corridors for the utilities under the town auspices.
Yeah, we take that control anyway, so maybe to be consistent, they should all be, they make it the same, so that, consistent.
Peter Schultz would like to speak.
Oh,
So there's some sections where, in the community where the utilidor is on an easement, which means the easement is overlaid on property lines. And there's other sections where the utilidor is on its own linear lot. And the private property lots don't come up and include the utilidor. So what you see on the map where you see those long strips of blue is that ladder approach. Now this could just be left blank, like a road utilidor, and doesn't have to be colored blue. Or it could be left as it is. But for the rest of the community, where it's the easement where the utilidor is located, I wouldn't want to. If you zone the easement as one thing and the rest of the lot is something else, you end up with a lot of lots where there's two zones on one lot, which would get confusing.
so Peter, I think that's a good clarification, and that identifies to us why it's the way that it is, so, yeah, thanks. Further questions, comments on the zoning bylaw?
Maybe by Wednesday, you want to read.
I mean, these are all great comments, good to have this discussion, good to get it clarified now, as opposed to someone coming to council and, you know. It being an issue on what someone can or can't do. Okay, Alana, you're good, Councilor Merrill?
I comment on the utility.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thanks.
So they asked us some areas in town where the utility is neither on a right of way or easement, because we are currently dealing with one of that right now behind leisure apartments. So I know off the top of my head two spots in town where we don't own or have control on where the utility actually currently exists. So we are currently in some kind of negotiation with Northview, for instance, for that spot behind leisure, because they actually own that. And there's a second spot, I'm blanking right now, but there are those two spots at least that I know off the top of my head that we have that issue.
That we don't currently have an easement?
We don't have an easement, it's not a utility right away, and we're having to work with property owner to come up with some kind of deal to have our utility on.
Daniel, that second spot was the North Mart Solar Farm, if I'm not mistaken. Where they're just replacing the utilidor after the library. I think that was the second lot that we were discussing.
That one is a little bit different. We are actually on their lot. I think the second one has something to do with grant. Just can't remember it off the top of my head. But the one you're mentioning right now, we are actually on their lot. And we're having to speak to them to But that's not because we don't have a right of way there.
Okay, no further comments on the zoning bylaw, if there is anything, get it into Jenna before Wednesday, and same process, we'll have first reading Wednesday, then it'll go out for consultation for a month, and then when we come back in August, we'll make any changes that are required, we'll identify what those changes are, and then second reading. From there, then it goes to the Minister of MACA for their review and approval. And if they approve it, it comes back to council, and then we give it a third reading in September. And we're good for 8 years. Okay. And Ken, departmental updates, we don't have those at this meeting. Information items, item number 11. One information item. Oh, you've already covered that at the last meeting in June. No other information items? Any information items from any of the counselors? Good. I guess one information item which is new since the council meeting is next to new is now officially open. Regular hours, we'll be going into even a Saturday hours with probably volunteers. And Thursday, they had our first over $1,000 revenue. So if you're selling dresses, shirts, pants for $3, $4, or $5 each, that's a lot of sales. So at one point there was cars lined up there 3 deep on Thursday afternoon. So lots of people coming in, lots of people picking up what they call the whale of the deal clothes that are going out to their railing camps or something, and those clothes probably aren't coming back. So but lots of other household items too, appliances, like small kitchen appliances, dishes, so jewelry, knickknacks. Yeah, we broke $1,000 on Thursday, so that basically goes back into the pot and we'll pay for employees or any other upkeep and stuff. And the work crew has been going steady also. Lots of requests to assist elders, some other requests, so that's also going well. And they're out every day on a job site somewhere or picking up stuff for next to him. That's going really well. Patricia's done a great job at that. Item number 12, council concerns. Deputy Mayor Bartlett.
After driving by them for the umpteenth time, are we, or do we have the ability to do anything about Clovis's makeshift road signs? I think he's had enough time to make his point. I don't know how long we want to continue to allow those to stay up.
Yeah.
Or if we have the ability to request he remove them, or
We can check with bylaw, but I think Cindy, we had discussed this before. There's nothing that we have, and I know that IRC has been in discussions with the RCMP about the signs in the past, so. But I know several people have asked me the same question, is there anything that can be done? And I mean, I've had a personal discussion with him that those signs are, not what we need to see in our community, but you're not dealing with somebody who's wants to sit down and have a rational discussion.
thanks.
So we will
Drove by them again last night now.
yeah, I know, driven by them recently too, and because they were down for a while, we thought, okay, that's over, but now they're back on.
You'll see another one that's painted white, but no lettering on it yet, so
Yeah.
maybe there's another one coming.
I'm saying, yeah, there must be a bylaw stating some sort of language on public signage, or suspect there has to be something.
But it's not really public.
It might fit under, and maybe we'll get a legal opinion on this, it might fit under unsightly premises. So maybe we do have a bylaw of that, so maybe we will check and see whether the definition of that includes offensive signage. Yeah.
They've been up for a while, they made his point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's just not something we need. Definitely. Okay, any other council concerns? Oh. Councilor Gillis.
Thank you. What are the chances or the bylaws, about an off-leash dog park? Maybe this is something the council has discussed in the past, but there's that green space in Rayon that was supposed to be a soccer pitch. But it's not a pitch, it's not the right size to be a pitch, it never will be the right size to be a pitch. But it's, half fenced in. So is there a process to look at that or see if that's a possibility in our community? Cause right now, there's nowhere to bring your dog. It is something like community concern or people have brought to my attention. So I was curious if that's something we could look at or discuss.
No, certainly, and I think the Park and Recs committee, when they next meet, that would be a great agenda item, so. So Jenna, let's plan to throw that onto the agenda for the Park and Recs committee and certainly make that happen, and then they would bring a recommendation back to council.
Thank you.
Sorry, I would just note that on one of the previous councils I served, this was looked into and they did examine for candidate areas. Rayon was one, a very obvious one. There was hesitancy to take that away from kids that are utilizing that, but there was another potential candidate area from what I recall that was somewhere around the old in-town airport. Would require some work to prepare it, obviously, but that was seen as one spot that could potentially be utilized for such an off-leash dog park. So I don't remember the details of it, but maybe the SAO or somebody could dig up some of the work that was done previously. And that's a good starting point, at least.
Yeah, I think another area which I've seen, on the river park at the end of Hoot Lake you're looking, what? South on the left-hand side of the trail, I mean, it never gets used by anybody. Certainly where the fire pits are and everything, they get used, so maybe what we could do is ask our Park and Rec staff to look at some potential areas before it goes to the committee, and then the committee will have an opportunity to weigh in, some different options.
Lions Den site.
What's that?
Sort of say, what about the old Lions Den site? Who owns that? The open lot there.
Maybe the town or commissioner's lands, we can check that also, but that's another potential, so it's a bit of work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all gravel-ish, but bit of work, that one. Yeah, we can look from different sites. Yeah. Okay, good point. Anything else, councilor concerns? Okay, we do have some in-camera items, so if we can have a motion to go on camera. Moved by Councilor Pear, seconded by Councilor Gillis. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thanks everyone for coming out. We'll be back then Wednesday as a regular council meeting.
Because all it would be is two friends votes and no fun getting